After Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 2 Bush Rescue, Chrome Studios didn't waste any time with a sequel, and released Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 3 Night of the Quinkan only a year later in 2005. There's a couple of odd things about this game. The first is that it was published by Activision, where the first two games were published by EA. I tried to find out why Activision took over, but couldn't find any explanation, so my guess would be that because Ty 2 sold much worse than Ty 1, EA didn't want to publish the third game, so Activision stepped in. Again, this is only a guess. The second thing that is odd about this game is that I don't think it was ever released in Europe. I couldn't find a copy online at all, but on the Wikipedia page it lists the game coming out in Europe on the Xbox in 2006. Also on Chrome Studios website there's a news story with the title Australia and Europe release date announced for Ty's new adventure. There's plenty of games that didn't get released in Europe for whatever reason, but it looks like Ty 3 was meant to come out here and then for whatever reason didn't. This meant that I had no idea this game even existed until I started reviewing the series. So to review this game I had to import it from America as well as buy a freeloader disc. Anyway, enough rambling, let's take a look at the last game in the Ty trilogy, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 3 Night of the Quinkan. The game starts with the Bunyip Elder telling Ty that Dreamtime has been infested by creatures called the Quinkan. The Elder then transports Ty into Dreamtime where he successfully stops the Quinkan invasion. When he is transported back, 6 months have passed and the Quinkan now have taken over Ty's world. It's up to Ty to reform the Bush Rescue and stop the Quinkan for good. I think this game has the best plot in the series. The first two games centered around stopping Boss Cass, but the majority of the time you were doing random tasks. For the first game that used the Super Mario 64 formula this was fine, but Bush Rescue adopted an open world structure that made everything feel too kiddie. Night of the Quinkan keeps the open world structure, but every mission is now centered around stopping the Quinkans. There's no helping someone find their kids or interrupting a movie shoot, you're always helping to stop the Quinkans in some way. I also really like the designs of the Quinkans themselves. Maybe they don't have the most original designs, but they don't look like anything that was seen in the first two games, so they really stand out as invaders from another dimension. This game also maintains the same sense of humour as the previous ones, so it's the best of both worlds. There's a story here that takes itself a bit more seriously, but there's still plenty of odd characters and silly jokes to enjoy. Night of the Quinkan is very similar to Bush Rescue gameplay wise. There are platforming sections, you have boomerangs with different powers, and there are a few vehicles to use. When playing as Ty, the controls haven't changed, except there is a new combat system that has been added. While in Dreamtime, Ty finds the Quinkan Gauntlet that allows him to perform different combos. Unlike other enemies, Quinkans have health bars, so you have to use different combos to take them out. When I say combos, all you're really doing is tapping the B button while occasionally pressing X to bite for tougher enemies. There's no dodge or block, so there's very little to it. However, the combat itself is such a small part of the game that it's hard to really complain about it. You're only taking control of just Ty for a certain amount of the game, and even when you are, you're mostly platforming or fighting enemies like the Frills that don't have health bars so can be still killed with your boomerangs. Most enemies also can be dispatched fairly quickly, so you're never wasting time wailing on the same enemy for too long. I feel like that this is the right way of implementing this sort of combat into a platformer. It makes fighting the Quinkan unique, but the combat isn't forced down your throat. I have played multiple games, such as Crash of the Titans and Sonic Boom, where the developers try and take a platformer and try and shift the focus more towards combat, and it always falls flat, because spending a long amount of time fighting enemies in a platformer feels like a waste of time and is always tedious. With Ty 3 though, it isn't the focus, but it still manages to do its job of making the Quinkans different to fight. The combat could still be better, as I always feel a little bit too locked into my attacks and it is a bit stiff, but it's fine for what it is. As previously mentioned, Night of the Quinkan maintains the same open world structure as Bush Rescue. This means you always have a few missions to complete on your map, so you drive through the open world to one of the mission markers, beat the mission and move on to the next one. In Bush Rescue, you were driving a car around in a pretty dull open world, so getting to missions was okay, but it wasn't that fun. In Night of the Quinkan, the car has been replaced with a robotic crab suit that fires missiles. The open world has been infested with the Quinkan, so you need to blast through them when travelling between missions. Controlling a crab suit is so silly and out of nowhere that it definitely made me laugh when I first saw it. None of the Quinkans can really do much to you, so you're just an all-powerful crab suit that destroys everything in its path, and it's really fun to use. Who wouldn't enjoy controlling a fast locked and loaded robotic crab suit? It also isn't pointless destroying enemies as you receive opals for doing so, which is the currency in the game once more. The open world itself has been split into two different sections, the savannah area and a swamp. This adds a much needed visual variety to the open world that Bush Rescue just didn't have. Overall, the open world is a big improvement as they took a part of the game which was a little boring at times and turned it into something memorable and fun. Let's move on to the other vehicles beside from the crab suit. The mechs return and my feelings on them haven't changed. As all you do is run around, maybe punch a few enemies and sometimes use a laser, it's nothing really exciting. I will say though that the mechs are a much better fit into this game than Bush Rescue, where they fell a little bit out of place. The next vehicle is the Gunyip, which is a plane and is new to this game. There are sections where you fly around a small area and use power-up to destroy enemies. Your movement is restricted, so you can't ascend or descend, which means there's no proper dogfighting with other planes. I still like these sections as they offer something different in terms of scenery and location. There's one boss fight you do in the Gunyip which takes place high in the sky with large skyscrapers poking through the clouds. This is one of the many examples of TIE 3 taking another step forward with its environments. You won't be blown away graphically by the game, but there's even more variety to the locations than the last game, and once again more effort has been put into them. There's even simple things that are different, such as a larger range of different lighting used, which helps every location feel unique. Returning to the vehicles, there's one more that I need to talk about, and that's the kart racing. The kart racing returns, but this time it's now integrated into the main missions. During the story you have to take part in kart races, which can either be a simple race or it can be a demolition derby where you have to be the last kart standing by destroying the others using weapons you pick up. While making the kart racing essential does make them feel less pointless, I still didn't like them too much. It still feels like a Mario Kart clone and the controls still feel too stiff. Sure, you can drift, but it feels so awkward that it's difficult to smoothly go around corners when using the drift. The kart racing isn't unplayable, but it's hard to see how anyone would really enjoy it when there's so much better kart racing games out there. Let's go over a couple of other additions, such as the Bunyip stones. Instead of having several different boomerangs with their own unique abilities, you now have boomerangs with Bunyip stone slots. Each Bunyip stone has its own ability associated to it, and this is added to the boomerang when you equip it. This means you can equip different Bunyip stones to the same boomerang and have more than one upgrade for it. It's a simple and effective system, as it means you can customize your boomerangs however you like, so you don't have to keep switching between them. As I said, it's a simple system though, as abilities don't combine to make new ones, they just stack on top of each other. The last addition I want to mention is the arena. A few times in the story you will be required to go to an arena to defeat different waves of enemies. The combat works because of how it's integrated into the platforming and exploring levels, but when it becomes the focus like this, it's really quite dull. I won't complain too much about it as the arena is only used few times, but it's definitely one of the weaker parts of the game. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 3 Night of the Quinkan doesn't reinvent the series, but it adds and improves to it. It takes the variety and open world structure of Bush Rescue and makes it more fun. The story brings all the missions together and travelling through the open world is much more enjoyable. There are also more vehicles, more environments, more boomerangs, and there's just more of everything. If you liked Bush Rescue then you should really like this game, but if you didn't like the direction Bush Rescue took then it might not be for you. In this review I've mostly been very positive about this game, so let me explain why I'm not giving it a higher score. I like this game, I really do, but the TIE series just isn't anything special. Despite the improvements made in Night of the Quinkan, it still isn't a game that will stick with me. I feel like it's the best that Chrome Studios can do, which is still good, but is it on the same level as Super Mario Galaxy, Crash Bandicoot 2, Rayman 3, Jak and Daxter, Spyro 3 or Sonic 2? No, it sadly isn't, and Ty the Tasmanian Tiger was never going to reach the same heights as those games. My score is 7.5 out of 10. Night of the Quinkan takes Bush Rescue as a blueprint and improves on it, but what is the best game in the TIE series?